I'm Karina, and I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, so I'm a Pacific Northwest girl. In Montevideo, I'm an English teacher, a writing mentor, and I've been living in Uruguay for 7 years, which was not my original plan. My original plan was to live in different countries around the world for 2 or 3 years at a time, get to know the culture, and then teach in another country. And I chose Uruguay on a whim, and literally on a whim, a 5-minute gut reaction to a book I was reading by a Uruguayan author, and clicked on buy for a plane ticket and had a minor panic attack and ended up moving to Montevideo 3 weeks later. Yes, I was reading, well, in Spanish, El Libro de los Abrazos, which translates to the Book of Hugs. I was reading the English translation, and I wanted to learn Spanish, and I could live anywhere I wanted in the world at the time, and said, hey, why not Uruguay? And I knew nothing else except where the author was from. Everyone was super friendly and super helpful. There were moments where I forgot my wallet back at the place where I was staying and needed to pay for something, and said, oh, come back tomorrow, which shocked me, and they really meant it, and I came back the next day and paid them. Those kinds of moments, people just helping me out of the blue, people translating for me, helping me navigate all of the procedures. I just want everyone to be incredibly, incredibly friendly. The process of immigration and getting residency in Uruguay requires patience. It's just like any other country in that respect. There are a lot of hoops to jump through, and it's important to remember that and just maintain a sense of humor and patience and just be kind to everyone. Uruguay has magic if you love the outdoors, if you love poetry, if you love slowing down and watching life be, if you love watching just beauty pass and move. And I don't know how to express this, but just go to Punta del Diablo in the winter and sit there on the beach and just watch the waves, watch the fishermen come in. Go to Barrio de Felices and go to the dunes and watch the shadow play. Wake up before dawn on any beach in Rocha. That's one of my favorite things about Uruguay, is going into the countryside, into the campo, and it doesn't matter what time of year. There's a quiet there where you can really hear the world. And I'm a bit of a poet, I'm a writer, so that's how I speak, is in poetry. But you can go in winter, go when there's no moon, when it's a new moon, and you can just see stars beyond anything you've ever seen. You can see the Milky Way with your own eyes. Juxtapose that with the culture that's here. It's really rich in culture that people don't realize. They think the only thing about Uruguay is mate and gauchos and I don't know what else, asados. Like, that's the stereotypical Uruguay, which is beautiful. There's a slow richness to that tradition, but there's also all this other fermenting culture of discussion of ideas and philosophy. Music is constantly evolving. There's just so much creativity here that I don't think people see when they first come. I learned how to slow down and breathe. I come from the United States where work is life. Everything is rigidly scheduled, and your life revolves around schedules and time and running from one place to the next. And the culture here taught me that it will still be there tomorrow to do. You can slow down and drink mate with your friends and have a conversation about the meaning of life for a couple of hours, and you will still manage to achieve what you need to at work. It'll still be there tomorrow. So I think that was a lesson I needed. One of the most important reasons for choosing to stay in Uruguay, I wasn't originally going to stay more than a couple of years. I have now chosen to make this my home. One of the most important reasons are the social services and the community's commitment to those social services. Healthcare is just a naturally given right that everyone expects will be there and really takes pride in. And I think Uruguayans actually take it for granted how accessible and affordable their healthcare is with the quality of care they're receiving. I receive better care here than I do in the United States. That would be one example for why I've chosen Uruguay as my home. Another reason is the commitment to human rights. Obviously there's problems in society, nothing is perfect, but there's a real sense of respect and just this understanding of the humanity of the person next to you that is unquestioned. And that is something that's also really beautiful about Uruguayan society. So you see that reflected in the social services. You see that reflected in what is prioritized. Uruguay is making a real effort to rely more on sustainable energy sources. They're making an effort to address issues of climate change. There are real issues here that will affect Uruguay from the more extreme weather that we're experiencing. And there are a lot of people here that are really committed to solving those issues and studying those issues. So the academic community here is really of a really high level. And I don't think most people know that about Uruguay. The level of education, the level of scholarship and research that's going on is really astounding for such a small country. I think my biggest challenge is that I'm an English teacher. So I spend my entire life in an English bubble teaching in English. So I want to learn Spanish, and I've been studying Spanish for 7 years, Spanish of the streets mostly. I've just started taking up actual Spanish classes. So for me, one of the largest challenges was just trying to communicate in the street slang, because Lombardo Spanish is not the Spanish you learn in the school system in the United States. So it's quirky, it has its own sense of humor, but it is really hard to pick up on. So that's been probably one of my greatest challenges, but also it's been really fun to learn. If you're thinking of moving to Uruguay, I would highly suggest visiting for an extended period of time, because this is a beautiful country, but it's really important to know what the unique challenges are going to be. So be able to understand where you want to live. Half the population lives in Montevideo. So if you enjoy the city lifestyle, it's important to experience Montevideo and understand what it's like to live here. If you prefer the countryside, it's important to go and spend time in the campo, in the countryside, and understand what life will be like there, because they're two very different rhythms of life. And then you have the beach towns as well. That's another rhythm of life where it's very busy in the summer and then very quiet in the winter. So the services will shut down quite often in the winter. So it's really important to visit, get a feel for it, figure out if this is the place truly for you. Uruguay is special, but it requires a certain level of acceptance of some of the frustrations of life, because you don't have the same level of convenience that you might have in, say, the United States. So it's really important to come and understand how things function here and say, hey, this is right for me. They need to have Spanish, really strong Spanish, or a remote job. I think those are the two things to think about if you're coming to Uruguay, is can I communicate sufficiently with Spanish? Or do I have a means of living that will sustain me? Because it is a very high cost of living, but it is a wonderful place to live. So you have to just be realistic about that. My initial thoughts about Uruguay were this will be a fun experience. They have a lot of writers, so there seems to be a really creative soul to Uruguay. But other than that, what I saw of Uruguay at first were very slow. Everyone's late to my classes. No one can arrive on time. The frustrations, I think, is what I saw most right off the bat. And then now that I've been here 7 years, I've started to realize that life here is about experiencing it, it's about savoring it, it's about slowing down. And that's where the frustrations come in for someone coming from the outside. And I think Uruguayans don't always realize how rich life is here. How they tend to look outwards a lot without realizing what they already have. And I think that's something I've realized is the gifts of that really simple living, slowing down. There's very few places like that in the world. I have many plans for Uruguay. I am in the process of submitting my application for citizenship to Uruguay, and hopefully everything goes smoothly, knock on wood. But I plan to retire here. I plan to live here the rest of my life. I might move away for a couple of years with my partner, who's Uruguayan, but we'll always come back. And I want to write and teach and get my master's degree here in Spanish, if I can get my academic Spanish up to that level. And this is where I see my professional and social life. But I discovered, people don't think of Uruguay as a trekking or hiking destination, but I discovered there's a small group of very dedicated hikers and trekkers in Uruguay. I somehow stumbled across their path, and they have become one of my core groups of friends. And we've traveled, we've hiked all over Uruguay, which has so many beautiful cerros for hiking. And we've also gone to Torres del Paine, and we started exploring Patagonia. So that is one of the richest areas of my life. It's a group of Uruguayan trekkers. The other hobbies I've picked up are golf. I never thought I would play golf in my life. I am a football player through and through. And I discovered golf, which is not a very popular sport here as well, but there's a very small committed group of golfers, and I love it because I'm a perfectionist. So I'm competing in golf tournaments. So I picked that one up, and the golf course is absolutely stunning. I mean, it's in Punta Carretas with this gorgeous view of the Rambla and the sunset. Absolutely stunning. And it's open on Sundays in the afternoons for free if you want to go and use it as a park. And I don't think most people in Montevideo know that. So that's a really beautiful opportunity to experience it. My routine has come to accommodate mate every morning. I first start with coffee because I am from Portland, Oregon, where the coffee is the best. My apologies to Seattle. And I drink coffee first because there's a really strong coffee culture here as well. There's some fabulous artisanal coffee that is brewed in Montevideo. But then I switched to mate because the coffee is for the first hour, and then my mate is just accompanies me throughout the morning and into the afternoon. And I don't know how to describe it except it's something it's very bitter. You have to be ready for that, but it's very soothing. And it is one of those hobbies, I guess it's a hobby or it's a way of life, I don't know, that is meant to be shared as well. So the mate circle also, I now no longer share my mate because of past events, but the idea of sitting with people and sharing mate, you don't even have to say anything, just watch a sunset. I do that a lot on the weekends. It's one way of meeting with my friends, catching up, slowing down with mate. We also have asados on the weekends. So that's another experience that has become part of my routine, is the family gathering. And we don't always have asado now because I've become almost vegetarian. So now it's just a family meal. But I do love the slowing down with friends, slowing down with family, and the idea of very slowly eating and enjoying and conversing. So that's become part of my routine. And I walk everywhere. This is a gorgeous city for walking. So the Rambla, the sunsets. So I learned really quickly that what football team you support is extremely political. And controversial, depending on what you say. So because I first started out teaching for Plansé Ball as a remote teacher, that was the first question they would ask me besides where are you from, is what is your team? And usually I said the Portland Timbers because that's my football team in the US. Because Portland is a very soccer mad town. But my very first month here, one of my friends took me to a Defensor match and I loved it. And I am now Defensor, completely. So my family, my Uruguayan family is Peñarol. I don't know if I should say that. I have friends who are Nacional, but I am Defensor. It started, at first my life stopped when the Uruguay national team played because my students' life stopped. So they would cancel class. And I learned very quickly to just anticipate that and ask if they wanted to reschedule. And then I started watching the national team and became Celeste through and through, like completely. But I hadn't mentioned this yet, I also am a soccer player and a goalkeeper. My very first day in Uruguay, I was at an asado of all things with my host family. And one of my very first friend here, she was on a football 5 team of women. She invited me to come and play. So within the very first week, my first group of friends were this wonderful group of Uruguayans and Brazilians and Argentinians and Venezuelans playing football, all women, which is becoming more popular in Uruguay. And so I got just completely involved in this beautiful grassroots football culture of women. So I love football. And yes, I'm a huge fan of the national team. So yes, life has to stop.